The baby shower was supposed to be a joyous occasion, but instead, it marked the day my world turned upside down. My stepmother accused me, falsely, of something so heinous, it shook my family to the core. The claim? That I had pushed her down the stairs while she was pregnant. Can you imagine? The audacity! It was an accusation laced with malice, aimed at destroying whatever fragile connection I had left with my father. And sadly, her twisted plan worked. My dad, blinded by her manipulation, took her side without question. He called me mentally unstable and jealous, labeling me as something I never was. And just like that, I became an outcast in my own family. But this wasn't the first time Vicky, my stepmother, had tried to ruin my life. Far from it. When Vicky married my dad a decade ago, I was just a kid, a bright-eyed 12-year-old with no idea how cruel someone could be. From the moment we met, she made it her mission to make my life miserable. I never understood why. I was polite, respectful, and eager to get along. But none of that mattered to her. She despised me, and she didn't bother hiding it. At first, I tried to win her over. I thought maybe if I was kind enough, patient enough, she'd soften. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. She'd mock me, insult me, and pick at every insecurity she could find. And when my dad wasn't around, her behavior grew even nastier. It was as if she relished the power she had over me. Eventually, I stopped trying to please her. If she spoke to me with venom, I'd spit it right back. If she criticized my appearance, I'd point out her flaws without hesitation. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but she left me no choice. Yet every time I stood up for myself, my dad took her side. He never reprimanded her for her cruel words, but I was grounded, scolded, and made to feel like the problem. The unfairness of it all was maddening. I didn't start these fights, but I was always the one punished. And I had no one to turn to. My mom had given up her parental rights when I was young, leaving me to navigate life with a father who treated me like an afterthought. Even before Vicky entered the picture, he was distant, more interested in his relationships than in being a parent. I spent most of my childhood with babysitters or my grandmother, who was my only source of unconditional love. When my grandmother passed away, the last semblance of warmth in my life disappeared. Vicky saw her chance to escalate her torment, and she took it. Her comments grew more cutting, her behavior more vindictive. She taught me about my grandmother's death, saying things like, "Now you've got no one to save you." And she meant it. She wanted to break me, to ensure I had no one in my corner. She even bragged about her plans to convince my dad to kick me out of the house before I could ask for help with college. According to her, the money would be better spent on herself. She called me an idiot, even though I was a straight-A student. Her insults were baseless, but they stung nonetheless. Living under the same roof as her was unbearable. Every day was a battle, and I was always outnumbered. My dad refused to see the truth about her. When I warned him that she was a gold digger, he dismissed me, accusing me of being territorial. It was infuriating. I felt like I was screaming into a void. Then came the day I snapped. It had been over a year since my grandmother's death, and Vicky had been relentless in her cruelty. That particular day, I came home from school already on edge. My outfit was ruined thanks to an accident, and I had a pounding headache. All I wanted was to be left alone. But Vicky? She saw an opportunity to strike, and she took it. The tension was immediate, electric. One moment, it was an exchange of sharp words, snarky comments flying back and forth, and the next, chaos erupted. Before I could process what was happening, I was on top of her, fists clenched, adrenaline pumping, and desperately trying to land a punch. The only edge I had was the element of surprise. She hadn't seen it coming, completely blindsided by my sudden attack. That gave me just enough time to pin her down. But it didn't last. Once she realized what was happening, the dynamic shifted in an instant. She was stronger, bigger, and it didn't take long for her to overpower me. What followed was an all-out physical brawl. I won't sugarcoat it, it was reckless, borderline psychotic, and utterly stupid of me to start a fight I had no chance of winning. At that point in my life, I was painfully thin, almost fragile, while she had the upper hand in every possible way. She broke free, shoving me off her with a force that knocked the air from my lungs. But I wasn't done. Screaming at the top of my lungs, I kept lashing out, refusing to back down. That's when she grabbed me, dragged me into a cramped, dingy storage room, and slammed the door shut. The sound of the lock turning echoed in my ears like a final verdict. Hours stretched endlessly as I sat there in the dark, feeling the suffocating weight of my own claustrophobia. The room was tiny, crowded with old junk and barely ventilated by a single, small window. My fists pounded on the door, my voice raw from shouting, begging her to let me out, promising over and over that I wouldn't try anything again. But she ignored me completely. My cries fell into an abyss of silence. It wasn't until my dad returned home that the door finally opened. By then, I'd lost track of time. 4, maybe 5 hours had passed. My legs were stiff, my throat sore from pleading. Yet, when he saw me, there wasn't a shred of sympathy in his eyes. Instead, he was furious, more enraged than I'd ever seen him. He threw out threats. He'd send me away, report me to the authorities, anything to ensure I never acted out like that again. My desperation hit a breaking point as I dropped to my knees, begging him not to go through with it. I promised them both, promised the impossible, that I'd behave, that I'd never step out of line again. Vicky, of course, seemed smug through it all. She was the victim, the wrong party, and she made sure to wear that badge proudly. The aftermath of that fight gave her free rein to belittle and mistreat me whenever she pleased. For my part, I kept my head down, swallowing my pride and enduring her jabs without so much as a word of protest. My goal was clear: survive until I could leave. The stakes were too high. I needed my dad's financial support to get to college. Without it, my future was a dead end. There was no one else to turn to, no safety net waiting to catch me. So I bit my tongue, endured her taunts, and counted down the days. Every time she tried to provoke me, I reminded myself that this was temporary. College was on the horizon, a light at the end of this suffocating tunnel. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, I graduated high school and left that house behind. It was like stepping into a different world. College brought freedom, a chance to reinvent myself, to breathe without the weight of Vicky and my dad looming over me. I found friends, joy, and a sense of self I'd never known before. Those years were the best of my life. I went home occasionally, holidays, birthdays, obligatory family events, but I made sure to keep my distance. Vicky's snide remarks no longer held power over me, and I refused to let her negativity darken my hard-earned peace. Once I graduated, I moved into an apartment with a couple of friends and landed a job at a law firm. The irony wasn't lost on me that my work now revolved around family law, divorces, custody battles, the kind of messy dynamics I'd lived through firsthand. My dad had even asked for my help recently, but after what happened a few months ago, I wasn't sure I'd ever be willing to extend that olive branch. Earlier this year, Vicky and my dad dropped a bombshell. They were having a baby. The announcement caught me off guard. At her age, a pregnancy wasn't what anyone expected. Still, I thought it might be a turning point. Maybe my dad would finally embrace fatherhood the way he hadn't with me. I congratulated them, bought a gift, and even attended their announcement party. It was more an act of duty than genuine excitement, but it was easier than dealing with the fallout of skipping it. Vicky barely acknowledged me that day. Not a glance, not a thank you for the gift, nothing. And honestly, I was relieved. Her silence meant no jabs, no attempts to stir the pot. I could endure the event in relative peace. Afterward, life got hectic at work, and I didn't see them again until the baby shower. That was a whole other spectacle. By then, Vicky was well into her 3rd trimester, and the event was as over the top as you'd expect. It was her 7th month of pregnancy. Her belly had grown so large that she waddled with every step. I remember it vividly. At the party, my dad was in his element, mingling and entertaining guests like it was second nature. Vicky, however, needed someone to escort her to the women's room. She turned to me, seated closest to her, and asked if I could accompany her. I hesitated. Surely her mother or sister would be better suited to help. But Vicky insisted, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. She wanted me. Refusing a pregnant woman didn't feel like an option, so I nodded and agreed, brushing off my unease. The walk was uneventful, or so I thought. After she finished in the women's room, she began to step down the small staircase leading to the door, a short set of 5 steps. That's when it happened. She stumbled. Her balance wavered precariously, and in that split second, I lunged forward and caught her just in time. Relief washed over me. She hadn't fallen. But then something I could never have anticipated occurred. Instead of thanking me, Vicky spun around, her face twisted into an expression of fury. She began screaming, her voice shrill and loud enough to silence the chatter in the room beyond. "Are you crazy?" she yelled, accusing me of pushing her. I froze. The accusations didn't make sense. She was standing in front of me the entire time. There was no way I could have caused her to trip, even if I'd wanted to. The look in her eyes told me everything. This was no misunderstanding. It was deliberate. She was putting on a show, and it worked. Heads turned. The murmurs began. Within moments, my father appeared, his expression a mix of alarm and anger. He asked what had happened, and before I could explain, Vicky painted a picture of me as a villain. Loudly, so everyone could hear, she told him I'd pushed her down the stairs. I felt the room spin. Desperately, I pleaded my case, explaining that I had done no such thing and had, in fact, saved her. I even suggested checking the security cameras for proof. But my heart sank when my father informed me that area was a blind spot. There was no footage, no evidence. It was my word against hers, and I already knew whose side he would choose. Predictably, he believed her. His face darkened as he turned to me, unleashing a torrent of words that cut deeper than any knife. "You're psychotic," he spat. "I should have kicked you out the day you attacked her." He accused me of being jealous of Vicky's beauty, her success, her everything. He claimed I'd been trying to turn him against her out of pure spite. The words burned. I tried to defend myself, but it was no use. He wasn't listening. Around us, the guests whispered and stared, their eyes heavy with judgment. The humiliation was unbearable. My father's final command was clear: leave, or he'd call the police. I felt my throat tighten, but I refused to cry. There was no point in staying, no use in arguing. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I left. As I walked out the door, I knew I wasn't just leaving the party, I was leaving my family behind. In the days that followed, I blocked my father's number and distanced myself from everyone connected to him. It wasn't easy at first, but I realized that emotionally, I had let go of him long ago. Months passed in silence. Then, out of nowhere, he called me from an unknown number. Curiosity got the better of me, so I agreed to meet him for lunch. When we met, he looked different. Defeated, almost. He didn't waste time getting to the point. He suspected the baby wasn't his. The realization hit him shortly after Vicky gave birth, sparked by the baby's darker skin and distinct features. My father and Vicky are both white, so the likelihood of the child being his was slim. At first, Vicky tried to convince him otherwise, but eventually, she caved and admitted the truth. She'd been having an affair with a coworker. According to her, it was a brief fling, a couple of nights here and there before the man moved away. She hadn't anticipated that he'd father her child and assumed my dad would never question it. But now, with the truth exposed, my father's world had crumbled. He'd moved out of their house, and Vicky hadn't even tried to reach out to him. Divorce was inevitable, he told me, though he admitted it was painful. As he recounted his heartbreak, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of pity. But I still didn't understand why he'd reached out to me. For a moment, I let myself believe he wanted to make amends, to apologize for the years of mistreatment. I was wrong. He wasn't seeking reconciliation. He wanted something else entirely. He wanted me to represent him as his lawyer. Imagine sitting across from someone who has wronged you repeatedly, their voice dripping with entitlement as they asked for yet another favor. That's exactly what happened to me when my father approached me for help, free help, at that. I don't even know why I had assumed he might apologize or show an ounce of humility. He's never been the type. To him, he's done no wrong. Ever. So, I stood my ground. I told him plainly that I wouldn't do anything for free. The best I could offer was to connect him with my coworkers. They could help him, but me? I was done. Even offering that was more than he deserved, but I just wanted to stay out of it. I made it crystal clear, I didn't want to be involved. I even wished him luck, thinking that would be the end of it. But oh, I was wrong. What followed was a full-blown scene, right there in the middle of the restaurant. He got upset, his voice rising, accusing me of being ungrateful, of being a brat. A brat! After all the years he treated me like I didn't matter. After the things he said, like calling me mentally unstable, jealous of his precious wife, Vicky. And now, here he was, acting like I owed him my loyalty, my effort, my time. Why? Because he's my father? He had the audacity to bring up the fact that he paid for my degree, as if that was some grand favor he did out of love. No. He only agreed because he expected me to pay him back, like it was a transaction. Not a gift, not support. Just another way to control me. I couldn't help but laugh. Right in his face. And then I walked out of the restaurant, leaving him sitting there. Since that day, the pressure from my family has been relentless. Calls, messages, all trying to guilt me, to manipulate me into helping him. They won't let up, and honestly, I don't even know what to do anymore. Update 1. I've had enough. I've officially cut my father off. Blocked him. Blocked my relatives too. The toxicity was unbearable. They kept pushing me, as if I was the only person who could solve his problems. But you know what I told them? If they're so concerned, they should help him find a lawyer. Not my circus, not my monkeys anymore. I had kept the door open to them because they hadn't directly wronged me, or so I thought. But looking back, their silence when I was being bullied, their failure to stand up for me as a child, that was wrong enough. They never defended me. Yet here they are now, ready to defend him. The double standards are mind-boggling, but I refuse to let it affect me anymore. All I want is peace. I want to work, live my life, and not think about them. They can deal with their own mess now. Update 2. So, here's some tea from my cousin, one of the few people I still trust. My father has initiated a divorce. And not just with any lawyer, he's gone for one of the top divorce attorneys in the country. It's going to cost a fortune. Which makes me laugh, because wasn't he just trying to save money by asking for my help? He has the money. He just didn't want to spend it on me. He wanted to walk all over me, as he always has. But now he's stuck. And honestly, I'm glad. After everything he and Vicky have done to me, they deserve each other. A match made in heaven, or maybe hell. Either way, I'm out of it. Update 3. And just like that, the plot thickens. The divorce? It's off. My cousin just let me know that my father and Vicky have decided to work on their marriage. They're canceling the proceedings and seeking counseling instead. I couldn't stop laughing when I heard it. I mean, can you imagine? After all this drama, they're going to try to patch things up. Honestly, I can't fathom a man with any self-respect staying with a woman like her. But then again, my father has never exactly been the poster child for dignity. Apparently, I'm still a hot topic among my family members. They love to sit around and discuss how ungrateful I am, how I did my father dirty. They say he doesn't deserve a daughter like me. You know what? They're right. He doesn't. Update 4. It's been almost a year now since I last spoke to my father. They've moved away to Missouri, raising their son with the help of Vicky's family. Good for them, honestly. The farther away they are, the better. As for me, my life is finally falling into place. I recently got my first promotion. I'm dating a coworker, and for the first time in my life, I feel truly loved. It's mutual, too. We've talked about it, and he feels the same way. It's such a strange but beautiful feeling, being valued, being seen. It's as if the moment my father and Vicky left my life, the clouds lifted. My career is thriving, my relationships are solid, and I finally have peace. I may not have a traditional family, but I have my cousin, my friends, and my own happiness. And that's more than enough. To everyone who's shown me kindness and support, thank you. It's incredible how people you've never met can care more than your own family ever did. I'll never forget it.